Television is not the truth. Television is a goddamn amusement park. Television is a circus, a carnival, a traveling troupe of acrobats, storytellers, dancers, singers, jugglers, sideshow freaks, lion tamers, and football players. We're in the boredom-killing business. So turn off your television sets. Turn them off now. Turn them off right now. Turn them off and leave them off. Turn them off right in the middle of the sentence I'm speaking to you now. Turn them off.
Stop them. An idea whose time has come cannot be stopped by any army.
Welcome to TLBTV, brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Project. Today on Eradicating Programmed Ignorance, we will be discussing the Federal Reserve, central banks, and their massive influence on global politics and finances. All right, let's start the discussion with a history of central banks in the good old US of A. And you'll learn a little bit more why I start at this point as we get through this, okay? For those who would believe that we, the people in America today, have the right of self-determination, this discussion will be a cold, hard slap to reality. America is no longer a functioning republic and has not been for almost a century, actually a century and a half, via the Act of 1871. America is a wholly owned corporation. Nothing, I say, should ever be taken for granted. And if you don't believe me, I don't challenge you to prove me wrong. I dare you to prove me wrong. You do, if you live in the United States of America, live in the United States of America Incorporated. America is, in fact, a wholly owned corporation, as are a vast majority of the so-called sovereign nations on this planet. Our upper echelon of leaders who are all in the know do not harbor any loyalty to the Constitution, regardless of the oath they through blasphemy swear, or campaign rhetoric that they spew. Okay? Any adherence to this founding document is presented by our treasonous leaders only through self-serving, or that of their masters, convenience or motivations. Now, when did this start? Since the days immediately following the Revolutionary War, big money and the global money changers have sought and ultimately acquired control in one fashion or another over our leaders and, through them, this nation's money supply, and thus, by default, this nation itself. Excuse me, it seems like every time I get ready to do a radio show or a TV show, my throat starts to give me problems. But when you talk for a living, this is one of the fallouts. A central banking system in America has been the goal of this elitist caste, with several initiated and terminated prior to the ultimately successful Federal Reserve in 1913. Many, and I do state many, and we'll give you a few for instances, intelligent and patriotic men have attempted to warn us of this tyranny over the past several centuries. And I don't mean years, and I don't mean decades, and I don't mean generations. I, in fact, mean centuries. But it is not the demeanor of the common citizen to function within the political realm, especially in America, because Americans are the most disconnected society when it comes to the functioning of their governance, the most disconnected society on this planet. Instead, we commonly choose to bestow ultimate trust on our elected representatives. Now, that's not something that only happens in the United States. Any democratic government or any other instances of a democratically run republic, the population tends to fall into basically the same patterns. But in America, it is probably the worst it is anywhere on this planet. And again, we commonly choose to bestow ultimate trust on our elected representatives. Because if we bestow ultimate trust on them, we don't have to know anything. Hey, I trust you. I elected you. I helped elect you. I voted for you. We sent you to Washington. You're going to do everything in your power, okay, to protect us. Everything in your power to represent us. This makes you a fool. It makes you a fool for two reasons. One, because the true power in this country was bestowed upon we the people. We are the sovereigns, not our servants or our duly elected representatives, but us. So by putting the ultimate trust in them, what we are in fact doing is acquiescing our power and our authority to them and trusting that they're not human beings, that they can't be bribed, that they can't be bought, that they can't be coerced. And I've got to tell you something. There's only one being that ever walked this planet, and I don't know if you're all religious or if you're not, and I'm not stating one way or the other. And by the books that I read, that was Jesus Christ. Everybody else has human fallacies and human failings. A government left to itself shall eventually accumulate power unto itself. This is a fact that has been repeated over and over and over again throughout all of recorded history. It probably was one of the biggest factors in the fall of Rome, which was a republic. Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. By foregoing our responsibilities as the true governing force of this republic, to do what? To hold our leaders accountable. Americans have committed a heinous mistake and have paid the ultimate price in the destruction and the usurpation of this constitutional republic. If you honestly believe, okay, what I told you, that the United States is in fact a corporation and not a constitutional republic, which it is, all right? Then what you must understand is you don't live in a constitutional republic. And what you must also understand is that we the people are to blame. Everything we the people suffer is because we have allowed it to happen through our ignorance, through our apathy. We have allowed it to happen, okay? We don't have to be ignorant. We can take the time to find how your senators vote, how your congressman votes. This is, in fact, your duty as a sovereign of this nation. As one who is in a position, okay, to tell our servants how they should be representing us. But we have acquiesced that power. And through acquiescing that power and that authority, this republic has been usurped. The United States is now a corporation, and there is no way around that. That is a fact. So let's go over a few of these prophetic warnings that I alluded to. And I'm going to be reading these. Sometimes it's a little tough with the glasses, but you know, I've made that a staple of this show, and I kind of like it. I do. Not so much because it gives me the ominous look most people say I have, but because it gives me a little bit of, not everybody knows everything about me, okay? Because there's nobody on this show that knows what color my eyes are. All right, so let's go forward with this. There is something behind the throne greater than the king himself. Sir William Pitt, 1770. I believe that banking institutions are the most dangerous standing armies, okay? If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of currency, the banks and corporations will grow up around them and will deprive the people of their property, and their children will wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. Thomas Jefferson, 1776. The refusal of King George to allow the colonies to operate an honest money system, which freed the ordinary man from the clutches of the money manipulators, excuse me, was probably the prime cause of the revolution. Benjamin Franklin, 1778. If you want to remain slaves to the bankers and pay for the costs of your own slavery, let them continue to create money and control the nation's credit. Sir Josiah Stamp, 1844. The real truth of the matter is that the financial element in the large centers has owned the government since the days of Andrew Jackson. Remember, I told you that the Federal Reserve and the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 is the third iteration of a central bank in the United States. Both of the others, excuse me, were put into place, and after their 20-year charter ran out, they were kicked to the curb by men that were obviously much smarter than those who were supposedly representing us at the turn of the 20th century. Okay, so let's go over that last one again. The real truth of the matter is that the financial element in the large centers has owned the government since the days of Andrew Jackson. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, 1933. Presidents are selected, not elected. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, 1932. Now let's take a pause here. Who do you think selects your presidents? Okay. Franklin Delano Roosevelt is the longest standing president in modern history. Okay. He makes a comment like this. There must be a reason for this. He has to be one of these individuals who's in the know. Because let's face it, he sat in that office longer than any other president. All right. So what do we mean by presidents are selected, not elected? It means that the oligarchs who control this nation, and I'll go back to something that I've told you over and over again, even Princeton University, one of the oldest and most accredited universities in the history of this country, has published a document stating, and they did this in conjunction with several other universities, so don't believe it was just Princeton. It was merely Princeton that published this. The United States is no longer ruled in a democratic process. Hold on, wait a minute. Princeton is saying that the United States is ruled in an oligarchical fashion. It is no longer governed in a democratic process. That means you and I got kicked to the curb. How did we get kicked to the curb? We got kicked to the curb because we didn't keep tabs on our leaders and we acquiesced our power. We gave them our seats in the bleacher because we trusted them to go to Washington and represent us. And we didn't feel we had to be involved in politics. Again, I will tell you, Americans are the most disassociated society on this planet when it comes to their own governance. So, if we talk about massive money in government, and we do, okay, you've got to understand there are literally thousands of lobbyists who have a career in Washington, D.C., buying or intimidating our leaders into representing the interest of their masters. The amount of money that's spent every year buying our leaders or corrupting our leaders or bribing our leaders is mind-staggering. One company alone, and they're by far not the biggest, Monsanto, okay, and you know how powerful Monsanto is in the governance of this country. How many countries out there have banned GMOs? We can't even get labeling. That company alone spends between $10 and $12 million a year lobbying our leaders. I just got done telling you there are thousands of lobbyists in Washington, D.C. Do the math. So when we say, or when Roosevelt said, presidents are selected, not elected, who do you think is doing that selection? All right. So, the world is governed by different personages from what is imagined by those who are not behind the scenes. Again, let me go over this one more time. The world is governed by different personages from what is imagined by those who are not behind the scenes. Benjamin Disraeli, 2008. I take this to mean, let's go back to the Wizard of Oz. Behind that curtain is the man who's pulling the levers. And the levers they are pulling basically dictates an entire nation's path. Okay? What Benjamin is telling us is that the vast majority of those of us who have acquiesced our power to these treasonous representatives are totally unaware that the world is governed by those we cannot see, not those we elect to represent us. It hasn't been that way for a very, very long time, my friends. So please understand, the central banking system is history's most successful Ponzi scheme, controlling both the issuance and the interest rate of the fiat currencies under their control. What do I mean by fiat? Look the word up in the dictionary. Okay, these currencies are created out of nothing except the cost of the paper it's printed on. And today, even that isn't true. Today, a vast majority of the money in circulation today is done electronically. It's ones and zeros on a computer. We are being pushed every day further and further towards a cashless society. Pull out your debit card, pull out your credit card, stick it in the machine, make your purchase. I can remember when people used to carry wallets full of money, ones, 5, 10s, 20s, 50s, and maybe even the occasional 100, who knows? Okay. Today, people see less and less of a need to carry cash at all. All right. So the cost of putting money into circulation is the cost of entering digits on a computer in a vast majority of the cases. Basically nothing. But yet, and we'll get to that, okay, all monies issued are issued with interest. Okay, we'll expound on that in a few seconds, all right? Making debt the profitable mechanism in this scheme. And debt ultimately equates to slavery of the afflicted population, with no vehicle by which to ever repay that debt. And we're going to get into that, excuse me, a little bit further. Anybody who's done any reading of the Constitution of the United States of America understands that the only mechanism our founding fathers gave us for the issuance of money is the U.S. government. That's it. Nobody else by the Constitution can issue American money. And that money was not supposed to carry an interest rate with it. So every dollar the Federal Reserve prints up and puts into circulation carries interest on it. And here's a shock. Excuse me. Most of you listening to the show might know, but some of you might not know. And if you don't know this, you've been hiding under a freaking rock somewhere. The Federal Reserve ain't federal. It's not part of the government. It is a privately owned bank with a board of directors that run the global monetary system. Period. It's a privately owned bank. The Federal Reserve is unconstitutional or extra constitutional. It exists outside the laws stated by the Constitution to govern this nation. in anybody who even thought about issuing currency via the American government has usually ended up dead. And there are controversies about several presidents who intended to do this. And oh, by the way, yeah, their lives were shortened. So we're looking at a system where everything is done to facilitate the increased debt load. If your money is issued to you at an interest rate, how can you ever pay it back when you're constantly creating money? All right, we'll get into that a little deeper a little bit later, okay? So again, all monies issued are with interest, making debt the profitable mechanism of the scheme. All right, whoever said you can't get something for nothing obviously had no clue about the global banking elite and fiat money systems. Obviously. Because from everything I just explained to you, they take plain paper or sit down at a computer and type in a few characters and create money. And from that, they charge us interest. So they, boom, out of thin air, create money. And for that, you and me will pay a price. And so will our children. And so will our children's 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 children. If this country lasts that long. And again, something else we'll touch on a little bit later. So one more time, whoever said you can't get something from nothing obviously had no clue about central banking or banks such as the Federal Reserve. These institutions, and I'm going to make a comment here, and if you do some research, and I beg you to do some research, you will see exactly what I'm talking about. And if you don't, I dare you to try and prove me wrong, okay? These institutions are and have been responsible for all wars in modern recorded history, all depressions, all recessions, and all national bankruptcies, and many more unnatural catastrophes on a global scale, okay? World War II. The banks not only supported the United States, who had the biggest and the most efficient war manufacturing structure on the planet, but they also supported the Nazis. And they also supported the Italians. And they also supported the Japanese. And they also, should I go on? All right? They hedged the bet in every direction. If you win the war, okay, obviously there are prizes. So it's kind of easy for you to pay back at least a good portion of that debt. If you lose the war, there's reconstruction. Either way, they win. So let me go over that one more time. These institutions are and have been responsible for all wars in modern recorded history, all depressions, all recessions, and all national bankruptcies, and many more unnatural catastrophes. Unnatural meaning, had they been left to their own devices, it never would have occurred. And this is on a global scale. Utilizing these mechanisms to manipulate the volume and the cost of money to their financial advantage. Okay, let's continue. And now I want to bring up the most diabolical quote by the ultimate father and purveyor of this tyranny on not just America, but the world. And that would be this one. Give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws. Amschel Rothschild. Okay. And what most people here don't understand is just how powerful are the Rothschilds. I did a little research, and you're never going to come up with an exact number of what the entire Rothschild clan is worth. Suffice it to say, they've got their finger in every single central bank on the planet. And we're going to get into just how common those are in a few seconds. But if you consider that there are a few numbers out there that people that have done massive research to come up with these numbers. The Rothschild family, the Rothschild cabal, the Rothschild clan is estimated to be worth in excess of 110, not billion dollars, trillion dollars. One family, one clan, one cabal. 110 trillion dollars. Now, we're going to go into something in a couple of seconds here that's going to scream the significance of what I just said. Okay? So again, one more time, let's go over this. It's a lead in for the next portion I wish to discuss. Give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws. These are very prophetic words. They really are, especially when you consider the crap the globe is in financially today. As the most influential nation on this planet, the USA is by a huge margin the largest debtor nation on this planet. But how big? We're talking about one nation. Just how much debt do we have? And how does it compare? Okay. We are the largest debtor nation on the planet with about 1/3 of the total global national debt. Okay? Well, what do I mean by the total global national debt? There are approximately, depending on who you talk to, 196 countries, and I'm telling you that we own 1/3 of the global national debt. So with 196 countries, what is the total debt of all of these countries combined? Again, you're never going to get an exact figure, but with the research I did, the closest I could come is this. The total debt is approximately $58 trillion. Now, why do I say the United States carries a debt load of about 33% or 1/3 of the total of all nations combined on the planet? With a national debt of almost bumping up on just about, we're going to be there soon, $20 trillion. How big is $20 trillion? That's a 20 followed by 12 freaking zeros. Not 3, not 6, not 9, 12 zeros. That's our portion of the $58 trillion of global national debt. We have 20 trillion of it. Now, since we're talking approximate numbers, I say approximately 1/3. It's probably actually more than 1/3. One nation out of 196 nations. And we have 33% of the global national debt. Why? Because we are the biggest nation of suckers on the planet. We are. And we trust our leaders. And we don't, as a rule. I'm not saying none of you do, because I know better than that. But a vast majority of Americans just don't give a damn. Let me lay on the couch, eat my cheeseburger, drink my Budweiser, and watch American Idol, because the guy I sent to Washington is doing everything he can to watch my back. You, my friend, are an idiot. And today, we the people suffer for that exact attitude. And that attitude, I'm going to say something on your behalf and in your defense, has been propagandized into this society. What I will also tell you is that the tide is changing and the elitist caste are getting very, very nervous, because more and more of us are waking up every day to exactly what's happening. Why? Let me give you a real big hint. The Ron Pauls of the world, who 30 years ago was saying we need to end the Fed. And when he ran for president 4 years ago, he was saying end the Fed. And yesterday, when he made a video, he said we need to end the Fed. First time in my life I ever saw a politician over 3.5 decades saying the same thing. I dare you to find another one. Or at least another one with that track record. So Americans are waking up. Not all of them. Not even the majority of them yet. But let's say 10% of the Americans are awake to the fact that we have been enslaved. Literally. You don't live in a constitutional republic. Forget about it. Get that freaking idea out of your head. You're wrong. Your textbooks are wrong. What's being taught to your children is wrong. It's all wrong. You're being lied to. The United States is a corporation, and your birth certificate has your name all in capital letters because you are an asset of that corporation, which they can borrow against. How do they do that? The average lifespan of an American is 72 years. What's the average taxes paid by the average American over a course of 72 years? Let's just throw a number out and say $100,000. So when you're born, the government can go out and borrow $100,000 against you because you are a paper asset to a corporation. And if you come up to me and get in my face and tell me we live in a constitutional republic, I'm going to call you an idiot and ask you to prove it to me. Then I'm going to prove to you where you're wrong. The problem is today, too many people don't want to swallow the hard pills. They want to believe we live in a constitutional republic. And with 320 million Americans, we could again. If we stood up and said, you've got our seat in the bleachers, you need to get the hell out. We can do this anytime we want. It is the mission of shows like this to awaken enough people to one day be able to do that. But don't come to me and tell me I'm wrong, that we live in a constitutional republic, because you, my friend, are an idiot. And I can prove that. And I have no trouble proving that. None. So if you think your textbooks are teaching your children the truth, you're an idiot. If you think that the History Channel is telling you the truth, you're an idiot. If you think the banksters are telling you the truth, or your congressman or your senator or your president is telling the truth, you're an idiot. Let me explain something to you. How many presidents don't know what I just told you? How many? You have to know. You literally have to know that they know. How many congressmen don't know this? Zero. How many senators don't know this? Zero. I started this whole thing off by telling you that every time your congressman or your senator or your Supreme Court justice or your president took an oath to the Constitution, they were committing treason. And they are. Their allegiance is not to the organic United States of America and the Constitution of the United States. Their allegiance is to a full Constitution and a 10 square mile plot of land called Washington, D.C., which can only be defined as a foreign entity. It is not part of the United States. They literally, if you stand up for your constitutional rights, have no power and no authority over you. None. But we've been sold a bill of goods. Today, every textbook out there perpetuates the lie. The truth is not hard to find. It isn't. And the evidence, the assured evidence, the guaranteed evidence is in abundance. But you have to know to look for it. And in the case of the American society, you have to want to look for it. You have to want to pop that comfort bubble. I got to tell you something. I'm the comfort bubble reckonest MF you've ever met in your life. And I do it intentionally. So $20 trillion, a 20 followed by 12 zeros. Okay. Any hopes or fairy tales of paying this debt off is all smoke and mirrors. Okay. Why do I say it's all smoke and mirrors? Let me explain something to you. We owe so much money to these foreign entities, not Federal Reserve private banks that have lent us our own money. We owe so much money that every single dollar, and I dare you to prove this wrong. I don't challenge you, I dare you. Every single penny that's collected in taxes, which we pay more and more of every single year, not one single penny of that goes to build roads. Not one single penny goes to build schools. Not one single penny goes to fund the military operations. Not one single penny goes to hospitals to support our veterans. None of it. Zero. Zilch. Not a frickin' cent. Nothing. All of the money that is collected in taxes goes to pay the interest. Just the interest. And we don't even accomplish that on the accumulated debt of $20 trillion. Almost, not quite, close enough to say that. Okay. Why are budget deficits so big every year? Because the money that builds the roads, the money that supports the Amtraks, the money that supports the schools, the money that supports the military, the money that's, and I could go on, is from deficit spending. It's the money that is borrowed over and above every year, because every single penny we pay in taxes goes straight to the Federal Reserve and these banksters just to pay the interest. And to these days, we can't even accomplish that. So if we can't even pay the interest payments, and we constantly borrow more just to maintain the structure, two things ought to come to mind. Okay. One, this is unsustainable. Okay. And two, we can never pay this off. It physically is impossible. What you now have is a nation that is indentured, a nation of economic slavery, a nation whereby the government owns you and uses you as an asset to borrow money against. Do you think I'm kidding you? I'm not. Every person born in this country is an asset to be borrowed against. How do corporations borrow money? Okay. I've got this, and I've got this, and I've got these assets, and I've got whatever. So I can use those assets to borrow money against. This is the exact same mechanism that you and I are caught up in. We are, in fact, in indentured servitude. It's not a joke. It's not an overstatement. I'm not grandstanding. I'm not saying this to gain fame or fortune. I'm telling you this because you freaking need to know it. And if I'm popping your comfort bubble, good on me, because it needs to be popped. Okay. So, if you mistakenly believe for even 1 second this is not a nation under total oligarchical rule, you are sadly and tragically mistaken. And what do I mean by oligarchical rule? What did Princeton mean by oligarchical rule? The oligarchs are the heads of the banks, the heads of the massive corporations, the massive corporate cabals across this planet that literally own humanity. And I'll get into that a little bit more. Literally own us. Look at your birth certificate again, and look at a birth certificate that existed prior to the U.S. becoming a corporation in 1871. Look at it, okay? Were the names all in capital letters? Gee, guess what? They weren't, okay? Were American citizens basically assets to be borrowed against? No, they weren't. So, the oligarchs own us because we have a government of treasonous leaders that have led us down the straight path and right into the clutches of these huge money changers. And these money changers literally own us. And what do we call these massive, egotistical elitists? We call them oligarchs. So again, If you mistakenly believe for even 1 second this is not a nation under total oligarchical rule, and again, I refer back to a paper Princeton published, you are sadly and tragically mistaken. If you think I'm overemphasizing this, tough. I don't care. I'm not going to sit here for an hour and tell you really nasty news like this, because I'm either going to put you to sleep or you're going to die laughing. I'm going to put it to you exactly the way it strikes me, and it pisses me off, because I have children and I have grandchildren. And when I had children, I wasn't aware of any of this. And I brought these children into indentured servitude. And my children have brought their children into indentured servitude, into economic slavery. There's no soft way to put this. And there's no better way to explain it. All right? So we had to go over the American situation because we are the predominant idiots on the planet with the biggest debt and the most, I don't know, propagandized and dumbed down society on the planet. When we tell everybody on the planet, when I was running around the planet, okay, and working for Raytheon, I was on the road and outside of the country anywhere from 75 to 80% of every year. And I was telling people how great America was. Most of this, 99% of what I've just told you, was never being talked about by anybody. And when I said I'm from America, the greatest country in the world, most people agreed with me. When I say that now, they look at me with a sad look and they turn away and smirk, because they know that we are the biggest debtor nation, that our middle class is at the speed of light falling apart, that we can't afford anything we have anymore, that the only thing that sets us apart at all, not our middle class, not our industrial base that's all but decimated by TPP-IP or TPP, okay? What sets us aside is a massive military, the likes of which the world has never seen, that an elitist caste can use as an 800-pound gorilla to beat weaker nations about the head and shoulders until they succumb to their wishes. And I'm going to get into that right now. Okay, allow me to take a sip here first. The throat is killing me. All right, let's get into the second phase of this because we're running out of time. Let's take a look at this, like I said, on a global perspective. In the year 2000, the turn of the 21st century, there were 7 countries without a Rothschild-owned, and you must believe that just about every single country, okay, on this planet, every single country that has a central bank, it is influenced by, owned by, or a majority of the shares are owned by the Rothschild cabal. This started way back when Mr. Rothschild said, I don't give a damn, you know, who makes the laws, just let me issue the money. All right. In the year 2000, there were 7 countries out of 196, 7 without a Rothschild-owned central bank, and they were Afghanistan, Iraq, Sudan, Libya, Cuba, North Korea, and Iran. 7 countries in the year 2000. Okay. Today, after the illegal invasions of several sovereign nations, beginning immediately after 9/11, but I'm going to stop right there and I'm going to tell you that there is information available by a general who visited the Pentagon not too long after 9/11 and was told that plans were in place to attack 5 nations in the Middle East prior to 9/11 and institute central banks. So today, after the illegal, and you don't have to take my word for that, do some research, you'll find it, okay? And I believe it was Westmoreland, but do a little research, you'll find exactly what I'm talking about. Today, after the illegal invasions of several sovereign nations, beginning immediately after 9/11, which is a totally false flag event. And if you don't believe that part of the reason it was accomplished wasn't for what I'm about to tell you right now, then I think you're still asleep. Maybe I should talk a little louder to help wake you up. Okay? We now live in a world of about, depending on who you ask, like I said, 196 nations, of which only three remain that are not controlled by a Rothschild central bank. These countries today are Cuba, North Korea, and Iran. Okay? Afghanistan, Iraq, Sudan, and Libya, via invasion, all right, or cross-border illegal aggressions or occupations, have fallen under the control of central banking powers, the central banking powers that be. Are you seeing a pattern here? Okay. We went into Afghanistan and basically took over the country. Oh, by the way, you know what we need? A central bank. We went into Iraq and basically took over the country. Hey, you know what we need? We need a central bank. We went into Libya, bombed them back into the Stone Age. Hey, you know what we need? We need a central bank. And Sudan, they've been punched and punched and punched and punched over and over again until there is no semblance of any political stability in there. So what did the powers that be figured probably help them the most? How about a central bank? Again, do you see a pattern here? Can you see a pattern here? If you can't, maybe I need to talk a little louder. Now let's go over the three that still don't have a central bank. And as I told you, they are Cuba, North Korea, and Iran. Okay, Iran is next. The war drums are already beating. Okay, you can see the conservatives and the neocons, and I'm not a conservative, I'm not a liberal, I'm not a neocon, I am not a progressive, I'm a damn American. And what I want to see is my ability to live with liberty, the right to decide my own future, okay? But just because I say I have no political leanings, okay? I'm not telling you that a vast majority of those who live in this country don't, because a massive majority of them do. And again, let's talk about the propaganda, but that's another show, all right? The political structure of this country is a show I'm going to be doing. That'll be my next solo rant. Iran is the next. Again, I say the war drums are already beating. And we can see this. The neocons right now are saying, hey, they're going to get a bomb. They haven't built a bomb, and they've been saying this for 20 years, but yet they still don't have a bomb. I'm not telling you they're not going to develop one. If I was a nation on this planet, and it seemed like everybody on the planet, everybody controlled by, a central bank or a Federal Reserve style bank, every nation, which is 193 of them, are breathing down my back, would I try to build a nuclear bomb to protect myself? Yeah. Am I excusing them for doing that? No. Would I like to see it happen? No. Can I understand why they might want to do it? Hell yes. Hell yes. It's exactly why we did it in World War II. All right. So Iran's next. There will be a war in Iran. There will be a war in Iran, and you will either see the United States, NATO, or our proxies in there fighting that war. And I can guarantee you, as soon as the Iranian population holds up the white flag, you will see a central bank. I dare you to challenge that statement, and let's sit back and watch, because if you don't think hostilities won't come to Iran, they will. What about the other two? Cuba will follow. I can't give you, an exact timeline on Cuba, but what was in the news lately? The president reopening relations with Cuba. Okay. I'm telling you, that's the first step. Cuba will be the next nation to have a central bank. And then there will be one. Out of 196 nations, one will stand alone without a central bank. Am I a fan of North Korea? Hell no. Do I like anything about North Korea? Hell no. Will I go and live in North Korea? Hell no. Do I think North Korea ought to have any influence in what we do? Hell no. So why aren't we going into North Korea forcibly and setting up a central bank? Because they have demonstrated the ability to fire off nuclear weapons. I can tell you right now, if Iran had right now nuclear weapons, we wouldn't even be having this discussion. We wouldn't be going in there, but we will. If Cuba had nuclear weapons, we wouldn't be discussing them. Okay, we wouldn't be going in there. But North Korea does. There will come a time very soon when North Korea will be the only nation standing alone on this entire planet without a central bank. And I do believe that they will commit suicide if they're invaded. I do believe they will shoot nukes off all around them and maybe even let one off on invading forces into their country. So I don't foresee that happening in the near future. Control the entire world's money supply and you control the world, including all so-called sovereign nations. Okay, I just got done telling you that you don't live in a constitutional republic and your vote doesn't mean crap unless what we vote on, okay, is in the interest of the oligarchs who pull the strings. If it is, by golly, it looks like we actually have a choice, don't we? All right. All right. And by default, you now have global governance. So if you control the money out of 193 out of 196 nations on the planet, okay, you in fact, by default, now have global governance. But who are the governments? Okay, they are the men behind the curtains. They're the wizards. They pull the strings. They say who can ship where, what the cost of money is, what the interest rate is, who's going to produce, who's going to buy, and what laws are going to be made. And if you don't think that TPP, IP, and TPP aren't a big part of this, again, you're an idiot. All right? So it's the men behind the curtains. It's these cabals. The next step, much easier, is true global governance, and sovereignty becomes an obsolete concept. And this will come via the United Nations, which is pushing for it in a huge fashion. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in the 9th inning with 2 outs and 2 strikes. And there's a killer pitcher at the mound. It's called the elites. Now, if you stop to consider everything I've just told you, if you stop to consider, okay, that everything you're told is a lie, everything your children are told is a lie, I don't challenge you to prove me wrong. I dare you to prove me wrong. Show me your proof that the United States of America is still a constitutional republic. Prove Princeton and 3 other top-rated universities wrong, not just me. All right? So if everything you believe is a lie, and you are nothing but an asset for the largest corporation on the planet, which is the United States of America and the most influential, and you don't believe, you don't live in a bankrupt society. The United States has been bankrupt for so long you can't even imagine, well over 100 years. Okay? We are in receivership, and guess who the receivers are? The Federal Reserve and those that own it, the global central banks. We're being lied to. Our children are being lied to. Everything you believe is smoke and mirrors, lies and deceit. If you take this show lightly and you brush it off as the ravings of an old lunatic, you do so at your own peril. If you listen to what I have to say and you do a little research, and if you go to Conscious Consumer Network, there's an article accompanying this. And it also leads back to another article on the Liberty Beacon. But I would strongly suggest everybody to go to Conscious Consumer Network anyway. It is because of that phenomenal network that we get a chance to put this word out. But if you ignore everything I said and dismiss it as the rantings and ravings of a lunatic old man, do so at your own peril. But more so, do so at the peril of your children and your children's children. Because if we don't stand up and push back against this right now or very soon, your slavery the noose of slavery becomes tighter around your neck every single day. Every single day, without exception. I want to thank everybody for listening to this show today. And I want you all to realize I don't enjoy doing these rants. They're necessary. And you can't put this information forward in a pretty little essay. And you can't put this information forward by talking in a monotone voice. If you don't understand the emotion behind my voice, is because that's how important this actually is, then maybe I should stop doing this show. I thank you all for listening. This is TLBTV, brought to you by the Liberty Beacon Project. Please go to thelibertybeacon.com. You'll find a lot more on this topic. Again, thanks. I wish you all a very pleasant evening, or if it's daytime where you are, a very pleasant day. And we'll be back next week. I'll probably have a guest, so I probably won't be quite so agitated. But with me, you never know. Good day.